Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to speak with Diana today. We will be talking about the upcoming eclipse. Welcome back, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always fun to be here.
I'm really excited. We haven't done this type of episode in a while. We did a lot last year, and we're gonna hopefully start doing it more. And I'm really excited. I think that all of us have felt what the eclipse brought us it was last week actually. And we are in eclipse season, and so much has happened just like I think for many of us in a week or so. And then the Mercury retrograde, it's the first time I really feel it happening, like physically with stuff not working and things like that, but it feels good for the mind to be calm. So maybe we can I think most listeners know who you are, but you can definitely introduce yourself first before we get into what eclipses, what this time period is, and why it's important to know and be aware of it, and how we can work with it.
Certainly. So I'm Diana Westley, and I'm an evolutionary astrologer, which means I really focus my work around kind of the soul's evolution, where we're coming from in past lifetimes, some of like the karmic imprints that we carry from our ancestry, from our cultural ancestry as well, and kind of the history of our heritage, the history of our planet, as well as kind of what we need in this lifetime to continue our personal and collective growth and evolution. So a lot of my work centers around the north and south node of the moon, with the north node representing kind of that evolutionary call forward, something different, a growth opportunity, and the south node being linked more into our karmic past, our old patterns and compulsions that kind of keep us stuck and kind of recycling through these karmic loops. And eclipses are especially important in evolutionary astrology because they happen when the sun and moon are kind of aligned with the north and south node of the moon. So they're very much this evolutionary, revolutionary, transformative time that happens twice each year. And so that's kind of a lot of the work I do is around this soul evolution that we experience, and how to kind of interpret and understand that using astrology. I also work a lot with goddess asteroids, and asteroids named after kind of feminine mythological figures, to help round out kind of the feminine archetypes, the feminine experience, using astrology, mostly because, you know, the different planets all have kind of a masculine and feminine side, but most of them are named after masculine deities. And so bringing in the asteroids, one of which we'll talk about today when we get into the eclipse in more detail, really just helps to, again, kind of round out that feminine experience, and for, you know, women, people who identify as women, or for men, people who identify as men that are looking to reconnect with the feminine, touching into and tapping into the energy of these asteroids tends to be really enriching and supportive. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, the work that I do. And I'm just really excited to be coming together with Sharon next week in ceremony to go deeper into this eclipse, and support folks who are looking to make some big changes, and experience kind of a big energetic shift at this time.
That's so great. And I wanted to say that through being in ceremony with you and listening to each of the different time periods when we had ceremonies, and learning about the asteroids, which goes a little bit deeper than just our regular astrology, it's been such great learning. I've learned so much from you, and just like what it means astrologically, but also the mythology. So we're definitely going to work with that. And you said it's 6 asteroids. So we're definitely going to work with the goddess energy. And what I think is so beautiful right now is that we have eclipses like sandwiching the Beltane time point, that sacred time when now in the Northern Hemisphere we have that divine union of the feminine and masculine, how important that integration is. And by working with the asteroids and the divine feminine, we're balancing, because our everyday life is like the masculine energy for most of us, right? That's how society is built. So it's when we are in ceremony and ritual, we are like naturally going into that state of more receptiveness. And that's why it's such a special time, this eclipse season, that it's more things, more points in time that is opening up. For me, it's been like a portal opening up. I really felt that. I don't know how you've been feeling since the opening of this eclipse season as well.
Yeah, I've definitely been feeling a major shift. Personally, I'd been kind of under the weather and not feeling very well for a while, physically. And when we had this first eclipse, I know for some people they felt a lot worse physically than usual, because eclipses can definitely kind of knock us down and ask us to take a bit of a break. But for me, I actually suddenly felt a lot better physically. And really felt kind of this positive energetic shift. Although at the same time, there have definitely been kind of karmic themes and lessons that have been coming up for me, areas where I have to kind of move out of my comfort zone and get more comfortable, with that first eclipse, as it was in the very final degree of the sign Aries, which is actually where my North Node is. And so I personally am learning a lot about that Aries energy, getting more comfortable with confrontation, stepping into my inner warrior, and not being so people-pleasing, which would be kind of represented by that Libra South Node. And so I think this first eclipse in Aries is definitely, it lifted some energy for me, but it also reminded me that, in a few months' time, the North and South Node are going to change signs, and I'm really going to be called once again to focus on getting comfortable with conflict, getting comfortable with standing up for myself, and yeah, again, kind of tapping into that inner warrior that the Aries energy brings. But at the same time, we're still working with this Taurus and Scorpio axis, the upcoming lunar eclipse that we're going to be kind of centering this ceremony around. Although we will talk a bit about both eclipses, because we're rounding out eclipse season with this ceremony. We're really kind of supporting this process of a chapter ending in preparation for something new to begin. And so we are rounding out this Taurus-Scorpio eclipse axis, this Taurus-Scorpio nodal axis as well. And so there's also, just some residue, some stuff that we've been working through over the past almost 18 months now, that's kind of ready for some clearing, ready to really shift. Some lessons that we've been learning that are really going to be driven home right now as we move toward this second eclipse and prepare to leave eclipse season. But yes, I've been feeling it in ways that have been surprising at times, and at other times not surprising at all, because these patterns are so deeply entrenched that I know that every eclipse that comes along is going to try and shake me out of them.
Yeah, definitely. That's really big that you've had it with your own North Node, you said, right?
Yeah.
So that must have been like a really, and it's going to be like a strong period for you to work on that themes. And it's great that you brought up the shifting, which I think will happen in June, right? Or in July.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe also, like, we are in the end of this cycle. For those that don't know, maybe what cycle we've been in with these two, the axes in Taurus and Scorpio, and now shifting. Maybe we can get into that, because that also means that we have like the last times to work on certain themes right now, which we won't have in a long time, and how that will shift maybe in the collective. How do you see that?
Yeah, so we've been working with this nodal axis, the north node in Taurus, like Sharon mentioned, the south node in Scorpio, and are going to shift pretty soon to having the north node in Aries and the south node in Libra. Generally speaking, this is kind of an interesting time because the traditional ruler of the south node in Scorpio is Mars, and the ruler of the north node in Taurus, the planetary ruler, is Venus. And when the nodes change sign this summer, the ruler of the north node is actually going to be Mars. Aries is ruled by Mars, and the ruler of the south node, Libra, is going to be Venus. And so we're really going through this like 3-year phase of finding this new balance between Venus and Mars, the masculine and the feminine, the passive and the active, you know, the peaceful and peace-seeking, and the conflict, not necessarily seeking, but you know, but getting comfortable again with kind of being conflicting and courageous and standing up for ourselves and standing alone, finding this balance between relationships and self. What's interesting is both Taurus and Aries, so this north node in Taurus we've been working with, and this Aries energy that we're going to be working with soon, both of them do have a very strong association with the self. So Taurus is a sign that's very self-contained in a lot of ways. It really wants us to come back to our true values, our core values, to come back to our bodies, get really comfortable being at peace in our bodies. And then Aries is a sign that wants us to get brave and courageous, get comfortable standing on our own, being independent to the extent that that's something that we need to learn. Whereas both the south node in Scorpio and the south node in Libra have this enmeshment with others, with Scorpio representing this very deep emotional enmeshment with others. You know, sometimes we find ourselves in like controlling power dynamics with others. Sometimes we find ourselves experiencing like a lot of distrust with the south node in Scorpio, which we've been working with. It brings up old abandonment complexes and fears, things like that. Just because Scorpio is where we like really merge with another person and completely lose ourselves in that relationship, in that person. And then Libra is a sign that's so focused on balance between the self and others. There's such a strong emphasis on other people, but there's also a really strong emphasis on peace and keeping the peace in relationships with others, which again can be a beautiful thing and also a really challenging thing when we think about, you know, bending so far backwards that we break, that we become resentful, that we become, you know, worn out and broken down. And so both of these, even though we have this really interesting balance that we're working with between Venus and Mars, with these two nodal axes, we're also, you know, a kind of continuing theme, I suppose, that we're working with is some level of self-reliance, self-love, self-value, self-regard, self-worth, self-assertion. Like there's a lot of emphasis on the self and the ability to come back to the self, to love the self, to stand up for the self, with both this north node in Taurus we've been working with, and as we move into Aries, that theme continues. It's just kind of a different flavor that we're working with. And again, relationships continue to be kind of a karmic area that we're working with both the south node in Scorpio that we've been learning lessons around over the past almost 18 months, and will continue with Libra. It's just, again, kind of a different flavor, a different experience there. But yeah, so that's kind of the essence of this shift that we're going to be going through, really finding this balance between the masculine and the feminine, and working with both of them in a way where we feel really empowered, really embodied, really safe within ourselves, and comfortable standing on our own when that's what's needed. With Taurus, the emphasis is like standing on our own in a very loving way. With Aries, it's sometimes standing on our own, in a more warring way when that's kind of what's needed. So it's an interesting transition that we're going through, and there are commonalities that we'll be continuing to work with, and there are also kind of some differences. But yeah, as we round out this North Node in Taurus, Taurus really just wants us to find inner peace, inner serenity, to ground ourselves, to experience greater stability in ourselves, in our environments, in our lives, to connect with the earth, to be in nature, to slow down, to simplify our lives. These are all of kind of the hallmarks and the calls, of this Taurus North Node we've been working with. And as we're rounding out this eclipse season, as we're rounding out this final few months with the North Node in Taurus, those are the areas where we're really being pulled. Taurus is a very joyous sign because it chooses simplicity and ease and presence, over complexity. Whereas that Scorpio South Node, it's really asking us to confront some old fears, some old complexes that make life sometimes more complex than they need to be, some old patterns that, again, keep us feeling maybe unsafe or unworthy or insecure, especially when we're kind of standing on our own and experiencing life on our own. And again, really strong emphasis on valuing ourselves, and not allowing other people to dictate our value and our worth. And yeah, allowing ourselves to just kind of be a bit more, slow down, settle into ourselves, come home to our bodies. So that's very much this energy we're working with. And this final lunar eclipse is going to be in Scorpio. And so it's going to be hanging out with this karmic South Node. It's really asking us to clear some of these fears, some of this distrust, this worry, this underlying anxiety that keeps us from being present, keeps us from being peaceful, keeps us from being joyous, keeps us from being loving. And starting with self-love is very much where that Taurus energy takes us. Keeps us from maybe feeling good and safe and happy and stable in our bodies as well. All of the fear, the compulsions that pull us away from ourselves, pull us away from our bodies, keep us feeling unloving, unloving of ourselves, unlovable as well. All of that stuff, it's time to really let it go, so that we can move forward and prepare again for this new energy that we're going to be working with soon. That was a lot of information. I hope it made sense.
Yeah,
But that's kind of
beautiful.
the nature of where we are.
Yeah, and it's the shift is very clear. I feel like it, like also these focuses that will shift, and it's, I think we all need it. And I'm thinking about what you said also about these the qualities that we're going into. Somehow we are, maybe also we will be moving into a the balancing between Venus and Mars, but it's like this new energy within that, and the sacred masculine maybe will be very important for us, because we also, like me and you in the ceremony, we do focus a lot on the divine feminine to balance the world, but our everyday life, and how can we bring in the union somehow. And that's why it's so beautiful that we will work on these things just days after Beltane, which will be, it's a beautiful time. I think for us in the northern hemisphere, depending on where we are, we're in different seasons now. Here in Sweden, it's still like quite cold, which would be winter in other places, but you can still see that the union of Mother Earth and heaven somehow has started to create life. So we are in a time where things can grow. And in Chinese medicine, that energy right now is the masculine yang energy that goes up, and it's the wood element, which is also connected to our liver and gallbladder. So we have a lot of creation energy now to move forward. When we feel stuck in life, then we need to work with this element, because then something is imbalanced. So I think that those practices we might bring in also in the ceremony, and to connect with what this portal is, because it's 8 times per year we have like this sacred point of time. And with the eclipse energy, the eclipse is showing us one thing, but also the season that we're in the southern hemisphere, it will be more of going into the yin element. So that's a little bit different, but I think that overall it sounds like we're also gonna move, like we're working on something that we're clearing out to be able to move forward, right, with this eclipse. So a lot of like that energy, that's why it's important, because just being aware of the energy is great. And then when we are consciously working with ourselves and with the energies around us, we can have that as a support as well in the work that we do. And I really love this balancing, but it's been intense working with these nodes and having to create that type of balance that we have been working with, and releasing, like on a collective level, a lot of stuff that has come up to the surface with this south node. So it's going to be interesting to see like what's going to happen after this eclipse season, and what is going to be integrated, and what happens when we shift the focus. And for all of us that's going to be in different places in our lives, it's one thing to talk about the collective energy, but it's going to look so different for all of us, the qualities and everything. So we will be doing this ceremony live, but for those that are not able to join, because it's going to be Central European time, 5 p.m. on the 5th of May. And so we have that 555. I love that. Love numerology. And in Eastern time, US, it's going to be 11 a.m. And in where you are on the western part of the US, it's going to be, is it going to be 8 a.m.?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So and when was it exact? Do you remember the time?
Yeah, so the eclipse is actually going to be exact right when we wrap up the ceremony. The ceremony will be about 2 hours, and the eclipse is going to happen about a half hour later at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, 1:30 Eastern time, 7:30 Central European time, or technically 10:34. So just right around a half hour after we wrap up with the ceremony, the eclipse will be exact. It'll be kind of at its highest energy, and so yeah, the timing aligns really well for doing this release work, and kind of capitalizing, I suppose, on kind of the highest energy point as we round out this eclipse season.
And just working with the Scorpio energy and around the eclipse, it's going to unlock a lot, I think, because it's so connected to, I mean, it's connected to a deep mystical aspect of life, and it's connected to the unseen and everything that we can transform. And I think that can be, and also a lot of like a lot of the ceremonies we've worked with the dark goddess and that descending energy, and that's really what Scorpio, I feel like, is as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, Scorpio's a really fantastic guide for helping us do this kind of karmic clearing work, because it is an intense energy. It's a very powerful energy, and it's a very honest energy. And so it helps us be very honest with ourselves and the patterns that we're stuck in so that we can move forward. It wants us to get really real. And it definitely doesn't shy away from the shadows or the shadow work. So
Exactly.
yeah.
it's the dark part of the womb, and it's really necessary as well. So if we push it away, then it's going to be a tough energy to work with. But if we learn to work with this, I was listening to someone who said that there's always like good and bad if we look at things like dualistically, and there's also the good light and the dark light, and it's the good darkness and the dark darkness, or like not even dark, because dark is not anything negative, like it's the good or bad or negative and positive. So if we integrate that more and stop pushing it away, it's going to be something that helps us grow more. And for this ceremony, we always work in, when we do ceremony, we do some type of ritual. I mean, we go deep into the astrology and understanding all of that from a conscious and logical level, somehow to tap into it. We work with the goddesses, we work with the Divine Mother. So it's going to be a beautiful and a meditation as well. So for anyone who wants to work deeper with this and in circle with others, it's really a great time to do that. And I'm actually shuffling right now my new healing oracle card deck, which is the Love Positivism Healing Oracle. And I wanted to tap into the cards now for us, just to see what's important to also prepare us for the ceremony. So just tuning in, especially because this deck is all about healing. So I'll draw a card for us. And it's actually working with the energy body. This card, it's actually this, I don't know if you recognize this space. This is the root chakra of the world. And the message is that I have a healthy and stable foundation in my life, and it's working with the root, which I've also mentioned is really important at this sacred time portal as well. So it's going to be on the energetic level, very important work. And the root chakra is very connected to Aries. So it's been like something also that has opened up for us since the Aries eclipse. So yeah, I think that's going to be a great thing for us to carry with us. And my deck is actually just weeks away from being live and out there, but you can still, for those that pre-order, will also get a free 3-card reading from me. So if you order it, you can go to my website and read more about it, and then put in your details, so I can give you a reading as well. And yeah, we'll definitely work with other oracle cards as well during the ceremony. Is there anything else that we haven't covered for the ceremony, Diana, or the eclipse and the eclipses in general?
Yeah, well, the ceremony is just a really powerful ritual, or kind of way of working with this eclipse energy, embodying it, really being present for it, which again is part of this call of the Taurus North Node right now. But it's also really powerful to come together with others to shed, heal, release around these eclipses. It can feel stabilizing, just like that card that Sharon pulled. And Taurus really does encourage and urge and want us to feel stable in ourselves and our communities and our environments right now. So I'm just really excited to come together with others for that. One goddess that I wanted to just touch on with the eclipse is Mbaba Mwana Warisa. She's a Zulu goddess, and she'll be sitting conjunct, or her asteroid rather, will be sitting conjunct this lunar eclipse. And the eclipse is happening at 14 degrees Scorpio. So for those of you who are familiar with astrology, who know how to look up your birth chart, you can look at 14 degrees. It's actually almost at 15 degrees. So look at kind of that middle degree of Scorpio and see if you've got anything interesting going on there. But this asteroid goddess, she is associated with rain, agriculture, the harvest, but also the rainbow as this symbol of the connection between heaven and earth. And this whole Taurus North Node, Scorpio South Node energy we've been working with, I feel like really is one of trying to find and create heaven on earth. Taurus really has that quality of wanting to experience joy and peace and goodness and love in this material realm. And working with the South Node in Scorpio has been helping us kind of heal and release and emerge from some of the shadow experiences that we've had on this planet in these earthly incarnations, so that we can be more present and joyous in these bodies and these material forms on this material plane in this connection with this earth. And so I just really love that she's involved in this eclipse because of that association with the rainbow, her association with the earth as well. But she's also a really interesting goddess because in her myth, she falls in love with a mortal man. And she doesn't totally trust that he'll love her for who she truly is if he knows that she's a goddess. So she disguises herself and hides her true form. And then she brings in this decoy bride, this beautiful woman, to try and kind of trick him or lure him away from her, just to see how much he genuinely loves her and wants to be with her, or if he can be kind of, swayed or pulled away from her by the beauty of another when she's taking this kind of ugly or unattractive form. And ultimately he passes the test. He, kind of sees right through the decoy bride, sees right through her disguise, and chooses to be with her, kind of proving, I suppose, like the purity of his love. And then the two of them go off to live in the sky and have, this beautiful life in this rainbow castle. And of course, he kind of represents the earth and his mortal nature. She represents heaven as a goddess. And there's this really powerful, kind of beautiful transcendence that they experience. But part of what I love about this story is that there's this test, there's this distrust in love, there's a distrust in goodness and the goodness of ourselves, the goodness of people, the goodness of, again, this earthly existence. And the rainbow is this symbol of faith and of trust, of believing that beauty exists and that goodness is out there, and that after the storms there can be calm and there can be these beautiful manifestations, these rainbows. And so I kind of get the sense that, again, this story, this goddess is very important to the work that we're doing right now. Scorpio energy, it in its shadow form, like, does bring us into a space of distrust. It brings up all of the trust issues we've had, the times we've been deceived and hurt, the times that we've been, you know, deeply wounded by others who we were vulnerable with, who we had tried or attempted to trust. It brings all of that up. But we can't really move forward unless we're willing to lean into faith, and we're willing to lean into trust and to heal those own old wounds that keep us distrusting, that keep us from experiencing the love that we desire to experience, not just with others, but also with ourselves. And that distrust comes back to ourselves as well, right? When we do get wounded, when we do get hurt on some level, we tend to blame ourselves and then not trust ourselves as much to make the right decisions in the future. So a lot of themes come up with Scorpio and Taurus. But one of the themes that I sense we're really working with during this eclipse is learning to trust in ourselves, learning to trust in the goodness that exists out there, learning to trust in love and have faith in love, have faith that things could be good. And again, part of that process is going to be doing some deep healing work, some releasing of the distrust that's maybe kept us kind of closed off, fearful, and so on. So that's some of the kind of powerful energy that we'll be working with during this eclipse. And Baba Mwanawari says just one of the asteroid goddesses that's involved. There's definitely a lot of other things happening, other asteroid goddesses. As Sharon mentioned earlier, we're in the midst of Mercury retrograde, which adds a whole other layer to this eclipse season. Uranus is going to be sitting with the sun opposing the moon, which definitely brings in some exciting energy and opportunity for more change, more evolution than usual, and also a desire to really liberate ourselves from something that's been kind of holding us back, or keeping us from being our true selves. So there's a lot of different things going on surrounding this eclipse. But I just wanted to bring up that one goddess because I think in some ways she kind of encapsulates the energy, and also on some level the energy of kind of the work that we're going to be doing with this ceremony is doing this healing, doing this release, moving past the storm so that we can get to the rainbow on the other side. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing I wanted to share for the eclipse, something to kind of look forward to, a goddess to kind of guide you and help you and support you during this time. And we'll get deeper into the other stuff when we connect next Friday.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It's going to be so beautiful to hear more from the astrological perspective and the goddesses, and I'll be doing some other things for us like meditation, the ceremonial part, and also maybe tapping into how ancient this is and how this is not a new phenomenon, and there's so much beautiful mythology around eclipses as well. So we have a lot of things to tap into. I'm really excited. I hope as many as possible join us, and in a few days the early bird prize will be gone, so it's great if you click in the link in the show notes and read a little bit about the ceremony and see if it resonates with you, and take part of the early bird prize. We're just happy to be able to offer this ceremony to everyone who feels called, and it's going to be very healing. And we're going to tap into a lot of important things as a group as well. That's why we love doing these circles and rituals together. So thank you so much, Diana, for sharing. We hope to see as many of you as possible next week. And I hope everyone has a beautiful eclipse season.
Thank you, Sharon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.